Welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildcats Insiders Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison, and we are getting closer, ever so closer, to the start of the Arizona college football season. The football season is upon us. August 30th is opening night for the Wildcats. They will be hosting Hawaii in a night game on TNT, bringing you back to the good old days when college football was on TBS versus and stuff like that. TNT will be showing the Arizona-Hawaii game. Two programs that were coached by Arizona legend Dick Tomey renovated the Rainbow Warriors before coming over to Tucson and doing the same thing for Arizona and going down as one of the greatest coaches in the history of the athletic department here at the U of A. But before we get to that, Arizona is gearing up for training camp starting on July 30th. Noah Fafita, Brett Brennan and company will be welcoming in some new faces on the coaching staff, new faces in the locker room. Arizona renovated its coaching staff a little bit with Seth Dagey joining the coaching staff as the offense coordinator after 1 year of Dino Babers. And then same with Danny Gonzalez taking over for Dwayne Aquina as the defense coordinator, getting the promotion from linebacker coach to defense coordinator. New faces in the quarterback room, Brandon Locke and Sawyer Anderson will be helping Noah Fafita develop the team, and getting ready for the season. Defensively, there's some overhaul on the defensive line, some mix and matching on the offensive line, but Arizona looks to be shoring up things and trying to get back to a bowl game after an underwhelming 2024 season where the team finished 4-8 under Brett Brennan. This is going to be his second year. I think it's a little bit easier going into this year than it was your first year when you're having to deal with retaining your roster, dealing with transfers in and out of the program and kind of building things on the fly as you inch closer to spring practice and then training camp. So I think it's a little bit easier going into year two. You know what to expect. You have a foundation, you have a standard, and now you can build upon that. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the good old days, a little bit about the past. Recently, Arizona announced it will be inducting several student athletes into its Arizona Sports Hall of Fame. One of those student athletes was former Arizona quarterback Nick Foles, who had a tremendous career at Arizona, a very long and successful career in the NFL, winning the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, being the Super Bowl MVP and defeating one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Tom Brady doing so and defeating a dynasty as well. But going back to Arizona, he was coached underneath Mike Stoops, who took a program that was, in the dumps after Makovic had it and destroyed the program. Mike came to Tucson, built the program back up from scratch, got it to a respectable 6-6, went 5-7, and then all of a sudden 7-5, you're going to a bowl game, beating BYU in the Vegas Bowl, and then that's when Nick Foles stepped in during that 2009 season. Nick transferred from Michigan State. He spent 1 year at ASU, transferred to Michigan State, and then transferred to Arizona, where he didn't win the starting job during training camp. He didn't win the starting job. Matt Scott was the guy that Arizona and Mike Stoops rolled with to start the year, kind of struggled against Central Michigan, and then was very underwhelming against Iowa. And it was in that Iowa game where the switch was made to Nick Foles. Arizona was trailing even after starting the game off with a pick six from Trevin Wade to jump up 7-0 on the Hawkeyes. I believe Arizona fell down 24-7 or something like that in that game. Nick Foles stepped in, led a couple drives, scored a couple touchdowns, but it was a little too late for the Wildcats. They fell to Iowa in that game, but you could sense a changing of the guard. You go from Willie Tuitama to Nick Foles, and it felt like that was the next in line of Arizona, solid, good quarterbacks, and eventually became legendary quarterback at Arizona. And that season was pretty special for Arizona. They were within one game of the Rose Bowl. You had that shootout with Andrew Luck, where the game went into overtime, and you got to see two future NFL quarterbacks, and Foles and Luck facing off against each other. Arizona won that game in overtime, and then it all came down to that Oregon game where Arizona lost in triple overtime to the Ducks by 3 points, but it was a great game. They came within one game of a Rose Bowl, very close. went on to go to the Holiday Bowl. They beat USC on the road in the Coliseum during that season too, which I think Mike Stoops was the first coach to do that since Larry Smith did it, I believe. Dick told me might have done it, but I think Larry Smith was the previous coach to do that. Not a lot of teams win in the Coliseum, especially teams from Arizona. So to be able to pull off that upset was tremendous. He had a connection with Juwan Kreiner that became a legendary 1-2 punch for the Wildcats. Mike Thomas and Willie Tuitama was a great 1-2 punch. Mike Thomas is one of the better receivers in Arizona history. Willie Tuitama, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback in Arizona history. But it did not match the firepower of Juwan Kreiner and Nick Foles. Foles threw for over 10,000 yards in his career, is number one in yardage, touchdowns, I think in the top 5 of completion percentage in U of A football history. Is the best quarterback that's ever played for the U of A, ever strapped on the helmet. Went to 2 bowl games during his time. In his last year, Mike Stoops was let go midway through the year after starting off 1-5. But Foles and Juwan Kreiner tried to lead the team. Arizona would finish with 3 wins that year and finished it off with an upset win over the Sun Devils up in Tempe. But what a career. You talk about one of the best deep ball passers in college football history. And Nick Foles is right up there with them. Beautiful long ball and beautiful touch. It seemed like whenever Arizona needed a big play downfield, it was Foles to Kreiner. And that was the connection that teams could not stop. You look at the weapons that he got to work with in Tucson. I think one of the better receiving corps in U of A history was that 09 team. When you look at Juwan Kreiner, you look at De La Chandine, Terrell Turner, David Roberts, David Douglas, Travis Cobb, and Bug Wright. Just a loaded receiving corps. And Gronk was on that roster but didn't play due to his back surgery. So you can imagine that receiving corps and that passing game could have been incredible. But Nick Foles was a very complete quarterback, had a tremendous NFL combine, and ended up being a number two second round pick, I should say, was the second round overall pick. I think if you look at that draft class, Andrew Luck, RG3, Nick Foles, you also had Kirk Cousins in that draft class. Brock Osweiler. I think you could make an argument that Nick Foles is maybe the second best quarterback out of that draft class. I know Kirk Cousins has had a successful NFL career, passed for more yardage, passed for more touchdowns, has had more success overall. But Kirk Cousins has never been the postseason quarterback that Nick Foles was. Just that one run alone with the Eagles was tremendous. But he was very good the second time around, too. They lost to Chicago off of a missed field goal. Tough loss. But Nick Foles is, for my money, the best quarterback in U of A football history. No offense to guys like Keith Smith. No offense to guys like Anu Solomon, Willie Tuitama, and others. But no, Foles is up there. And I think it's amazing that they're going to be honoring him. It's amazing that it took this long for him to be inducted into the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame. But I think fans are going to love to celebrate that. It reminds them of some of the good old days. I know there's mixed reviews of the Mike Stoops era, but when you look at the prime of the Mike Stoops era, it's Nick Foles, it's Willie Tuitama, it's slinging the ball all around the field, and the Sonny Dykes offense, stable running backs and solid defenses. Those teams could have gone up with some of the best of them in the country during that time. They're just a solid team. Maybe they wouldn't have won those games, but they would have been right there with them, and they would have been competing day in and day out. Some of the bigger upsets that Foles was able to pull off were that USC win. And then also you look at that Iowa game, the second year in 2010. That's the loudest I've ever heard Arizona Football Stadium is in that Iowa game. Arizona was able to win that game, ending the game on 4 straight sacks to end the game against the Hawkeyes. But that was a tremendous Iowa defense, and Nick Foles just torched them. Threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he had a pick in that game. He might not have had a pick, but I think he had 1 pick in that game. But just a tremendous career. I totally get why he's going to the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame, and I think he's the gold standard for U of A football quarterbacks. I think if you're a guy like Noah Fafita, if you're a guy like Oscar Rios who's coming in, you're going to be looking at a guy like Nick Foles saying, that's the type of career I want to have in college football. I want to make it to the NFL, make a lot of money, and make a mark in that league. And Foles was able to do that. And I think if Chip Kelly, when he was with the Eagles before, the switch to Doug Peterson. If Chip Kelly believed in Nick Foles as much as Doug Peterson did and the rest of that offense, things could have been different in Philly. But he got them a championship, won a Super Bowl MVP, and had a tremendous Arizona career. And now he is going to the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame, and I think fans should be celebrating that, and it's going to be a special occasion.